Hey guys, Telegram Sam here. Just want to get out of the way that my hair is this bluish, silver, gray color now. I know I probably have people being like, oh, where's the purple? So yeah, it's this for now. Who knows when I'll change it again. Um, and I decided now in the beginning of my videos, I want to start giving shout outs to channels I've been watching lately. These can be anything from a channel that has like 7 subscribers to like thousands of subscribers. But the first channel I want to talk about is the channel Ryan Kidd. This dude is just encyclopedia of punk rock, hardcore, new wave music. Every time I watch his videos, I feel like I've learned so much. Yeah, I thought I knew a lot about music, but compared to him, I know like jack shit. So yeah, if you're definitely into the genre of like punk rock, hardcore metal, early new wave stuff, that's kind of like the main thing he really knows a lot and talks about. He gives very in-depth reviews about albums, is very honest about them, if it's worth buying, or if there's only a couple songs on them, here's the songs you should listen to. And if you like this one album or this one band, he gives other recommendations. He even gave a recommendation on one of my vinyl haul videos where I talked about Ant. He gave me a couple of like similar bands that were like that, and I listened to them and I love them now. So thank you, Ryan, and thank you for making awesome videos talking about punk. It definitely brings me back to my young teenage years of discovering punk and like going all in and like listening to that kind of music that he's showing. So yeah, love his channel. Go check it out. I'll link in his channel in the description down below. Yeah, so for the video, I want to talk about 10 records that you could find for $10 or less. I tend to watch a lot of videos where people will be talking about these records that are so revolutionary, everyone should have them, but there's only one pressing and it's like $350. And I think for like young people like me who don't have that much money to shell out on records that often, or for people that are like just now getting into it, you can definitely still find records that are super good for super cheap. You don't always have to be paying $30 or $40 for these radio shoes of albums that are coming out now. So let's talk about those. First off, I'm going to be talking about Stand, Sly and the Family Stone. Great funk, soul, rock album. This was originally released in 1969. Is their 4th album, but it's definitely their most commercially successful record and like the record that a lot of people know most of their songs from. In 2015, it was deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, and it was put into the Library of Congress. You can definitely find these super cheap, gently used. Usually costs you around like $8 or $7. I think I got this one for like $10 not that long ago. Yeah, great if you're into funk soul, especially like early funk soul stuff. Sly and the Family Stone, how can you beat that? And then this I showed pretty recently. I'm in the Ants, Kings of the Wild Frontier. This is just such a staple of that whole early British new wave pop punk that was going on in the late 70s, early 80s. This is just amazing. This was the second album I'm in the Ants released. I think they only ever released like 3 albums. And in 1992, Nine Inch Nails did a cover of Physical. They definitely really had a huge influence on bands like Nine Inch Nails and that sort of grunge, hardcore, industrial music. And the fact that they have like 2 drummers really adds something kind of unique to their sound. It sounds very boisterous and upbeat. I love the songs. Dog Eat Dog, Ant Music, Physical's a great one. Kings of the Wild Frontier was like the main single off of this album. But yeah, if you want to get more into the whole new wave pop punk thing that was going on back then, this is definitely a great starter and something like I feel everyone should own. Next we have David Bowie's Let's Dance. This is probably David Bowie's most commercial record. I've watched interviews that he's done, and he calls this like the start of his Phil Collins era, where this album and the next two albums he did after this were kind of more based to more commercial 80s sound than he was used to. But I love this album. This is definitely one of my top 10 albums I have in my collection. You know, it has Let's Dance, Modern Love, China Girl. It has like all of his main like 80s singles on here. And plus, I actually didn't know this until I was like doing a little bit of research for this video about the album, that Stevie Ray Vaughan was the lead guitarist on this album, and Nile Rodgers too was the co-producer. Yeah, didn't know any of that, so that's really cool. Yeah, can never beat Bowie. Next, we got Disraeli Gears by Cream. These are pretty cheap. I think I only paid $5 for this. This is an OG 1969 US pressing. But yeah, there were so many reissues of these after this was released. You can definitely find VG Plus versions of this for like between $5 and $10. But yeah, this was the second album by Cream. It definitely changed the psychedelic pop rock blues game at the time. This was released in 1967. Fun fact, the recording of this album only took 3.5 days, and on their last day their visa expired. So that was something interesting that I learned. But yeah, this is a great standard psych album. I mean, it's not as crazy as some of the psych that, if you really deep dive around this era, that you'll find. It's very beginner psych. But yeah, it's just a great hard rock blues album, and it's crazy to think that only 3 people were playing on this. It definitely sounds a lot more than that. Great standard. Next, we got The River by Bruce Springsteen. This was released in 1980. This was his only double album he ever released, and he actually recorded 50 songs, and only 20 made it onto the record. And I think in the early 2010s, he finally released a box set that had like all 50 some odd songs on it on CD. And the song Hungry Heart was actually supposed to be for the Ramones, but the producer John Landau convinced Bruce not to give the song to the Ramones. But I would be interested in listening to them do a version of that. But yeah, this has the song Sherry Darling, Independence Day, Hungry Heart, The River, obviously, and my personal favorite Bruce Springsteen song, Point Blank. That song is so beautiful. Like, literally every time I listen to it, it sends shivers down my spine. Just like the story he's telling in the song is so beautiful, and like the music to it is so beautiful. It also has Cadillac Ranch. The song is definitely like a roller coaster. Like, all of a sudden you'll be having this super like upbeat song like Sherry Darling, and then you'll crash down to this really depressing dark song like The River. And definitely has ebbs and flows to it, which is why I think it's so great, and it's personally one of my favorite Bruce Springsteen albums. So yeah, gotta love the boss. And my cover to this is pretty beat up, so don't scold me, but this is Belladonna by Stevie Nicks. This was her first solo album that she did in 1981. This has the song, what is it called? The one she does with Stop Dragging My Heart Around with Tom Petty and Leather and Lace with Don Henley. This probably has every song that you know from Stevie Nicks' solo career on here. Belladonna, Stop Dragging My Heart Around. After the Glitter Phase, it's kind of like a really good country rock song. Edge of 17, Come On. Yeah, this is probably the only Stevie Nicks solo album I'll probably ever buy. All of her other albums kind of just sound very generic and the same to me, but this is just such a staple of her career. So yeah, look, I love you, Stevie Nicks. Next, we got Dream Police by Cheap Trick. I feel like I can always find Cheap Trick really cheap. Cheap Trick really cheap. Their albums were, they released so many albums, and plus they were like one of the top acts during that time. So it's not like they did limited releases of a lot of their stuff. So yeah, you can usually find a lot of their stuff for like $10 or $12. This was released in 1979. This was the fourth album they did. And plus, they actually had to push this back because they released Live at Budokan in between the last album and before this album. So, and they weren't suspecting how successful it would be, so they waited to release this. But yeah, this is just a great Cheap Trick standard. It has Dream Police, obviously, which is just a great song. Gonna raise hell's on here with Writing on the Wall, Need Your Love. Just great 70s standard hard rock. Gotta love Cheap Trick. They never disappoint. Next, for something a little easier. This is Billy Joel's 52nd Street. I know, you guys are probably like, really? Billy Joel? I love this album. I feel like it's kind of a nice palate cleanser because, I tend to be into more heavy, hard rock stuff, and this is just a nice, like, calm. And plus, like, the song Big Shot, like, I love that song. Zanzibar, Rosalita's Eyes, definitely has more of a jazzy undertone to it compared to, like, a lot of his other albums. And it was also among one of the first albums to ever be released on CD, so that's kind of cool too. And then next we got Rocks by Aerosmith. This is probably my favorite Aerosmith record. It's definitely like the hardest hitting, most hard rock. Like Last Child, that song is funky. It's hard. It's just a little bit of everything. Back in the Saddle, like that's such a staple. Back in the Saddle is also one of Slash and James Hetfield's favorite hard rock songs, so that's kind of cool. And I also read that Kurt Cobain in his journals listed this as one of his favorite albums, which is kind of wild to me because I've not imagined Kurt being a hardcore Aerosmith fan, but I guess he liked this record. This was released in 1976, and this was the fourth album they did. And by now they were like really into like full-on drugs. I was reading interviews they did around the time of this record, and they're like, yeah, I don't even remember the recording half of it because we were so loaded. So it's kind of crazy that they managed to really create one of their best things while they were completely smashed. So yeah, don't do drugs, kids. And last but not least, depending on when you ask me, this is definitely one of my all-time favorite records. Rolling Stones' Tattoo You. I love this album. It's like usually when people ask me like, oh, what's your favorite album? I'll either say this, Kicks by INXS, or Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. I don't know what it is about this album, but I just love every song on it. Like, you'll be listening to one song, you'll be like, okay, I know what to expect from the next song, and it completely takes a left turn. And I found out when I was doing research about this album that this is actually all studio outtakes. This is all just like stuff that they didn't really want to put on the previous albums 10 years before this. This was released in 1981. Like the song Tops and Waiting on a Friend were cut from Goat's Head Soup. And then a lot of the rest of the songs were either cut from Some Girls or Emotional Rescue. So that's cool. I didn't know that. And I guess they were about to go on a world tour, and the record company wanted them to put an album out to support the world tour, but there was some rifts in the band and they didn't want to be in the studio together, so they just put some stuff together and did some overdubbing and released this, which is kind of insane to me because the sound it's just such a full album. It has everything from Start Me Up, which is, very classic, like one of their biggest hits, just, classic pop rock song. and then you go to Slave, which is a very like sleazy, bluesy, hard rock song, and then you go to Heaven, which is almost kind of like an early shoegaze new wave song, and then you top it off with Waiting on a Friend, which is this very like kind of bluesy soul song. It has like a little bit of everything, and I love it. And the fact that you can find this for super cheap. I only paid $2 for this at a thrift store, and it's one of my all-time favorite thrift store finds. So yeah, that's that. So anyways, hopefully that gives hopefully you people, record collectors who don't have that much money to be shelling out $50 a record, or people that are just getting into record collecting, some ideas of some stuff you can find for super cheap. That doesn't sound cheap. So anyways, that's it for the video. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.